That's first. Those things are real spotty.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Beavercreek Rotary. I'd like to thank our greeters, Sandy Breaker and Dick Gould today, as well as Brian Lampton and Karen Lampton. Eric Marcus, our ticket master, Mike Swick, Pete Bells, and Mark Weinstein for our great programs, and of course, Jim Gundel for the website and YouTube. I'd like to invite Denny Jarvie up to do the invocation.
Good afternoon. Would you please join me in prayer? Oh, Holy Creator, the paths of our lives are filled with peaks and valleys. When we are on the top of the peaks, we become satisfied that we tend to ignore the things of importance. When we are in a valley, we feel a sense of abandonment and again can focus only on what's directly ahead. Remind us, as you do in nature, that above the tree line, the mountain tops are barren, and only in the valleys can we find the opportunity for true growth. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Secretary's report, David Cusack. What do you got for us?
Amanda Hayes has the guest today.
Amanda, you got a guest today?
I do. My husband, David Hayes.
Hello, David.
Charles Curran has guests today.
My wife Mara is with me.
Hello.
We have 24 in attendance, 50% today.
All right. It looks like we have another guest at the door. Is that? So I just want to say Don and Pete Bale so far, the two Rotarians, other than Rick, of course, that won't be at the meeting today. So that will be a fine later. Sergeant at Arms, Brian Lampton.
All right, good day, everyone. Let me see if I can do this without glasses. We'll try. Our weather today, high 74, showers expected this evening. Tomorrow, morning showers, so maybe it'll just rain all night and stop in the morning, high 76. And Sunday, high 82, partly cloudy. Everybody knows we had some tornadoes in the area. Was that Wednesday? Knocked down some trees and hit that Myers distribution center in Tip City. A wealthy tourist, a United States tourist, was mugged for his $685,000 watch. He was, yeah, that's a watch, isn't it? Just outside a five-star hotel in Barcelona, the Swiss-made Hublot Black Caviar. That's what the watch is called. Oh, wait, Hublot, H-U-B-L-O-T. I may be saying that wrong. Black Caviar bag. Features, is it Hublot? Features hundreds of precision cut black diamonds. Police are hunting for the four men who mugged the tourist. Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, two people fell into a vat of chocolate. A tank of chocolate at the M&M factory out there. They were unable to get out. They were about waist high. So I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, but the fire department had to come get them out. Now this one was interesting. The British Royal Navy sank a ship called the Galilean back in 1708. This was during the War of the Spanish Succession. The Colombian Army released videos showing gold coins and other valuables to be worth billions. I feel like this is like a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, or Caribbean, however you say it. The shipwreck was found near the port of Cartagena It is speculated this ship was loaded with 200 tons of treasure, including millions of high purity gold coins, as well as silver coins and emeralds. Apparently, the Spanish Empire had plundered these valuables from South America. It has an estimated value of 17 billion. So that's a hell of a treasure find, wouldn't you think? Let's see. Today, you know how we have, it's the National Day of. Today, it's National Movie Night Day. National Ballpoint Pen Day. National Black Cow Day. It does sound racist, and we're going to keep on that theme, Brandon. National Egg Roll Day. National Herbs and Spices Day, and National Iced Tea Day. So it's a good thing Congress was busy for that. In sporting news, I did get some NHL news for you hockey fans. You're welcome. Game 5 of the Eastern Conference, Tampa Bay wins 3-1 to take a 3-2 lead in the series over New York. They will face Colorado when that series is done, right? Because there's correct. If they win, right, because it's best out of 7. Thank you. In college women's softball, the World Series has been completed and Oklahoma wins a 10-5 victory over Texas. In the AL Central, the Indians are 3 games back in 2nd place. And in the National League, the Reds are 12 games back in last place. And just for the hell of it, I looked up the Vegas odds to who will win, what football team was most favored to win the Super Bowl. I couldn't believe it. Buffalo Bills. Yeah. Followed by Tampa Bay, which that figures. Kansas City, the Rams, Packers, Chargers are also in the hunt. Hope it's not Tampa Bay. Okay. On this day in 1752, Ben Franklin flew a kite during a thunderstorm to demonstrate the connection between lightning and electricity. This is World War II news. In 1940, a couple of things happened. Norway surrendered to Germany, and Italy declared war on France and Great Britain. On this day in 1692, the first Salem witch hanging took place. On this day in 1935, Alcoholics Anonymous was founded. And I thought this was interesting. In 1944, the youngest player to ever play in the major leagues, 15-year-old Joe Nuxall. That's right. Made his major league debut pitching for the Cincinnati Reds. Some birthdays today. In 1895, the first African-American actress wins an Oscar, Hattie McDaniel. She starred in Gone with the Wind. Let's see, born in 1921, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. In 1922, actress Judy Garland. I think everybody remembers her from The Wizard of Oz, among others. A famous, a country singer named Lee Brice was born in 1979. And a model named Kate Upton was born in 92. Was at the gas station. This guy with this big pickup truck, it might have been Pete, I'm not sure, was at pump number 3. He put $10 worth in there. I said, "Where are you headed?" He said, "To pump number 4. What time is it when an elephant sits on a fence? Time to fix the fence. Very good. What gets wet while drying? A towel. Very good. What kind of band never plays music? Rubber band. Very good. What are the 2 things you can never eat for breakfast? Lunch and dinner. You heard that one. She knew that one. What do Alexander the Great and Winnie the Pooh have in common? This took me a minute. Their middle names. Ed got it. What part of the chicken has the most feathers? The outside. I know, that's bad. Sorry, I can't help myself sometimes. You walk into a room. The room contains a match, a kerosene lamp, a candle, and a fireplace. Which do you light first? God, Ed gets them all. The match, of course. So a woman's talking on the phone to her friend and says, "Oh, I feel like my body's gotten totally out of shape. So I got my doctor's permission to join a fitness club and started exercising. I decided to take an aerobics class for seniors. I bent, twisted, gyrated, jumped up and down, and perspired for an hour. By the time I got my leotards on, the class was over." This is a study, women's ass size study. 10% of women think their ass is too skinny, 30% think their ass is too fat, and 60% say they don't care. They love him. He's a good man and wouldn't trade him for the world. Yeah, see, you didn't know where that was going.
I was concerned.
Yeah, I was too. That's why I read it really fast. Okay, lipstick in the Catholic school. According to a news report, a certain private Catholic school was recently faced with a unique problem. A number of the 12-year-old girls were beginning to use lipstick and would put it on in the bathroom. That was fine, provided it was a natural color or natural skin tone, but after they put on their lipstick, they would press their lips to the mirror, leaving dozens of little lip prints. Every night, the maintenance man would remove them, and the next day, the girls would put them back on. Finally, the principal, Sister Mary, decided something had to be done. She called all the little young ladies into the bathroom and met them there with the maintenance man. She explained that all these little lip prints were causing a major problem for the custodian, who has to clean these mirrors every night. You can just imagine how these little princesses really gave a crap about all this. So she wanted to demonstrate the difficulties in cleaning the mirrors. She asked the maintenance man to show them the effort involved in cleaning these mirrors every night. So he took out his long-handled squeegee, dipped it into the toilet, cleaned the mirror with it. Since then, there have been no lip prints on it. That's an education right there. Okay, I do have some fines. I don't know if I'll get anybody with this. If you own a black diamond, I was reaching for that one. If you have never been to Pennsylvania, if you have never been on a ship, a cruise ship would also count. If you have not had iced tea today, see, I see some iced teas. Those of you haven't, that'll be $1. Let's get another one out. If you have not used a ballpoint pen today, that'll be $1. If you have never seen The Wizard of Oz, I might get 1 or 2 out of that one. Let's see if I get anyone with this. If you've never heard of Kate Upton. Oh, see, who? There you go. That's $1. And if you did attend a Catholic school, whether you kissed the mirror or not, that'll be $1.
I'm broke.
That's good. That's the point.
Happy bucks.
What's the fine for doing a political fundraiser?
20 bucks.
Yeah, we'll get him.
1%.
Or the next time he shows up.
1%, that's fair.
I'll start off with the happy buck. This is probably the first time I can remember in my presidency that my table is full. And in my excitement of announcing this to myself but out loud, Dick Gould reminded me that it was actually Sharon's tables. Eric.
Drop my dollar. I have a happy buck. I'm back from Houston from the Rotary International Convention where I attended with 11,000 of my closest friends. Met a lot of people there. I even saw people that some of you might know. I don't know. It was a great time. I am registered to go to Melbourne in May for the next convention. So you can get online and register to go to Melbourne. And I have a second happy buck in that I was reconciling the bank account today because we have a board meeting after this meeting. And I realized that one of the checks hadn't cleared. And happily, Stephen still had it.
Oh, gosh. Thank you. Anyone else? Tampa Bay?
Tampa Bay? No, it's not Tampa Bay. Bring Tampa Bay, as you can tell from class. But today is my 27th anniversary, wedding anniversary with my wife. I did tell her this morning, since we've been locked up, for 2 years, couldn't go anywhere. But really, it's a 25th.
Oh, there you go. Congratulations. Brandon.
My father retired last Friday and started a road trip on Monday, and he gets here and right after board meeting, so it'll be the first time to meet Brandon.
All right. The meeting's short then, please. Anyone else? What you got, Shannon Graham?
Oh, man, so leaving to go to Washington and Virginia for a couple of days, that should be pretty exciting. Pretty excited about the whole Dragons thing, so, and if you guys remember, it is August the 6th at 7:05. And again, I challenge you to find a cheaper form of entertainment at $2.
All right, perfect. All right, raffle drawing, last four, 6561. 6561. Oh, Brandon. Just as a reminder, half our proceeds go to our annual Christmas basket. 6-1, right? Not 6-9. 6-1. And that's, man, you were grilling me today. Pot grows, all right. We do have a special program today. We are honoring our fallen fellow Rotarians from this year. And obviously, one of them is David Fleming, which is why Sharon wanted to come today. So much appreciated. We're bad, Dave. But and we're fortunate enough where she's going to speak afterwards as well. So Brian Lantern's going to come up and we'll start this. Come on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, first we're going to talk a little bit about Bob Wilda, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force, 86 years old. He was born in, looks like Manitowoc, Wisconsin. I had a lot of grandsons and family. He retired from the Air Force after 26 years of service. Obviously a member of our club and a Paul Harris Fellow. He had 29 years of perfect attendance. He was also a 50-plus year member of the Christ Episcopal Church. He was a senior warden there and a member of the choir. Anybody know that? I did not know that. He was also on the Capitol campaign and was a volunteer with Words and a member of the Beavercreek Senior Center. I've always learned something about one of our Rotarians when I see these. And we all lost David Lee Fleming. He was born in Newcastle, Indiana, and he spent his life in service of God, country, and community. I think we all knew he graduated from Butler University, as he reminded us on a weekly basis. And he also graduated from the McCormick Theological Seminary and the Ohio State University. He served the Presbytery of Miami Valley as an associate executive from 1988 to 2001. He also served as pastor to the First Presbyterian of Rushville, Indiana, Urbana, and in Logansport, Indiana. He was executive director of the Kirkmont Center, faculty member of the United Theological Seminary and Fortis College, as well as interim pastor at many churches throughout the Dayton area. He retired with the rank of colonel from the United States Army Reserve. He was a chaplain for 22 years. He was on active duty during Operation Desert Storm and was stationed at the USA Medak, Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He was also a volunteer for just about everything. American Red Cross, Dorothy Love Retirement Community, Covenant Gathering, Miami Valley Hospital Pastoral Counseling Center, Executive Board of the Tecumseh Council Boy Scouts, Rotary, Dayton Organizing Project, Bergamo Center, and Presbyterian Council for Chaplains and Military Personnel. He has also served as in the General Assembly Task Force, supporting educators at the Kirkmont and Geneva Center boards, Western Ohio Country Mental Health Association, Arts Council, the Urbana Foundation, Great Lakes Association, and Presbyterian Church Educators. And then finally, and most recently, we lost Scott Hadley. Most of you probably know his first name was Art or Arthur. Survived by Nancy, sons Michael, and he's married to Kathy. Art Scott Jr., or the second, I should say, Jill, all in the area, and several grandchildren.
Like Chris.
And there he is. Yeah, hi, Chris. Scott was former member of the Beavercreek City Council and former mayor. He was a charter member of the Beavercreek Chamber of Commerce. He'd been on council several times, and I think we also know he is also a charter member of this Rotary Club. Scott was also very instrumental in establishing the city of Beavercreek, which finally took place in 1983. He was also a member and very instrumental in bringing the 9/11 memorial here to Beavercreek. If those of you who have been down there, that giant piece of metal, Scott was a big part of that effort. I think he may have been mayor at the time, or close around that time. Mhm. I was on that committee too. It was one of the coolest things that we did in Beavercreek. And I know Scott was very instrumental in getting that here. And it's not on his thing, but he's also a longtime member of our Popcorn Festival committee. One of the things about Scott is, and all of us probably did, I called him Mr. Beavercreek. I never said it out loud or to his face. I just thought, he's Mr. Beavercreek. If it had something to do with Beavercreek, Scott was there. He was involved. I actually called him Mr. H to his face. That's what I called him. But anyway, I found out from his family that a lot of people thought of Scott as Mr. Beavercreek. So we'll keep his family in our prayers. I know you guys miss him, and so do we. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Yeah, so I will say, going from all three memorials, Scott's and David Fleming's, I mean, all of them were nice, but Scott and David Fleming's really stuck with me. Their whole entire lives were about service. Their most favorite thing was Rotary, but everything else they've done in their life was all around service. So heard some really awesome stories about Mr. Hadley that I didn't know about. And obviously definitely missed, but what a blessing to have you here today, Chris. For those of you who don't know, we have a board meeting today, and we are either going to accept or deny his application to be one of our newest Rotarians. So we will let you know later on how that goes, sir. But no, very blessed to have you here. And it's been a rough year here at Rotary, Rotary year. And I can't say it enough. You know, we learn all these new things that we didn't know at People's Memorial, but definitely take the chance to get to know people more prior to that. So easier said than done. But yeah, with that being said, again, Justice Sharon Kennedy wanted to make sure she was here today for Bad Dave's celebration of life. So we appreciate you taking the time and speaking to us as well. So Sharon Kennedy.
Thank you. Well, I honestly, I'm honored to be here today. And I think that the correct thing to do first and foremost is to pardon Dave the Bad. Because as it turns out, Dave was really Dave the Saint with all that he did in service and in faith. So thank you for allowing me to be here today. So when I thought about what to speak about, I was reminded that, hey, you've already done that program before. We don't want to hear a repeat. So what was chosen for all of you is misperceptions of the First Amendment. It's really pretty timely when you start thinking about what's happening in this country when it comes to First Amendment rights. Our time together is way too short to discuss in depth all of the protections the First Amendment provides for. All of the freedoms protected by the First Amendment. Law schools offer semester-long classes about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, separate semester-long classes on each of the freedoms protected by the First Amendment. And because our time is so short, we're really just going to talk about misperceptions to help you better understand those conversations before you begin a fight at the holiday table. It is a mere 45 words, but in my view, they are the most powerful words ever written. Sadly, research demonstrates that the majority of Americans cannot even recognize one freedom protected by the First Amendment. Consider these. In 2006, the McCormick Tribune Freedom Museum survey, where they were asking questions about freedoms in The Simpsons, 1,000 people surveyed, 22% could name all 5 members of the Simpson family. 0.01% could name all 5 freedoms protected by the First Amendment. 0.01%. 8% could name 3 freedoms, 40% could name 2 of 3 judges on American Idol, and 23% could name all 3 judges on American Idol. In 2017, the University of Pennsylvania did a public policy center study. 1,013 people surveyed. 37% could not name one freedom protected by the First Amendment. 48% could name one, the right of free speech. 2018, the Freedom Forum Institute, the State of the First Amendment survey, 1,009 people surveyed. 40% could not name any of the freedoms protected by the First Amendment. 36% could name 1, 12% could name 2, 8% could name 3, 3% could name all 4, 0.01% could name all 5. 1 out of 1,009 people surveyed. And think about this. That McCormick survey that I talked about first, 21% of the people answering that survey believe that the First Amendment protects your right to own and raise pets. 20% believe it protects your right to drive. 36% believe it protected women's right to vote, which is the 19th Amendment. And 38% believed it was the protection against self-incrimination. Now, I am stupefied by that. Because who, after all the crime drama that's ever been on television or in the movies, you don't know that's your Fifth Amendment right? In the Freedom Forum, 9% believe the First Amendment protected their right to bear arms. 2% believed it protects their right to vote. So recognizing all of that, here's the most powerful 45 words ever written. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. 5 basic freedoms: freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom to peaceably assemble, and the right to petition your government for redress. Since the 1970s, the United States Supreme Court has written more about the First Amendment right of free speech than any other case type, hundreds of cases since that time. Yet, despite the survey facts, I can assure you that everyone here, everyone in your family, and every American believes they know what the First Amendment really means. Today, we are very sensitive over when we believe someone is encroaching upon our right of free speech and our freedoms. But with that comes this understanding. We all believe there are some limitations on our rights instituted by government for just causes. So let me begin with a question. Don't shout out an answer because we'll come back to it at the end. Can you yell fire in a crowded theater? Misperceptions of the First Amendment. They believe that the First Amendment right of free speech is most important because it was first. But what if it wasn't first? You see, when the founders brought forth the Constitution and sought ratification, the colonists brought forth hundreds of amendments. They were reduced down to 12, not 10. The Constitution was written in 1787, ratified in 1788, effective in 1789. And during that time, when those requests for amendments came, it was the first Congress of the House of Representatives that proposed 19, and it was the Senate that consolidated the 19 to 12. They were presented to President Washington in 1789, but only 10 were actually ratified. The first two failed. One, you should give praise and glory to God that it did, because the First Amendment would have been this. The House of Representatives would be apportioned to the states, and that every 40,000 to 50,000 citizens would get a representative. Today, you would have more than 6,000 members in the House. If you think Washington is broken with 435, I got news for you. You wouldn't move it with 6,000. The Second Amendment also failed. It prohibited Congress from giving itself an immediate pay raise. Congress would have to vote for it and then stand for election. What I found out in doing this research is they invented the cloud back at the founding because constitutional amendments never go away. They just hang out here in the cloud, and then someone can bring it back. And that one became the 27th Amendment to the United States Constitution in 1992. So Congress can enact a pay raise, but they have to stand for election before the voters, and then it goes into effect. Now that you know that the First Amendment wasn't really first, does it matter? Of course not. The order of the amendments does not relegate some sort of importance on them. Because if it would, I would actually believe that a Second Amendment would be the First Amendment, the right to bear arms, because of what it stood for. In other words, to be able to affront the government itself. Some people believe that the freedom of speech is more important than anything else, and it overrides all the other rights that you have. But is that really true? And could it be? Well, history has shown us that the right of free speech yields to other constitutional rights and other laws. It's a question of scrutiny as to what law has been enacted infringing upon a First Amendment right of free speech. And think about Equal Protection Clause and your personal property rights. Do I really have the right to come on your lawn and give a speech of any kind? So of course, other rights yield to even free speech. But what is speech? So many people have argued about when I am doing a speech because I'm speaking. But what about written word? What about electronic communications? What about publications and leaflets and flyers? And can you really distinguish between a traditional media force and citizen bloggers or citizen reporters in this day and age? Many people believe that the First Amendment right of free speech is greater when it comes to the right of press. But is it really true? In 2005, Judith Miller, a New York Times reporter, was jailed for civil contempt for refusing to tell a federal grand jury who her source was that disclosed the identity of a CIA operative. She sat in jail because she wouldn't reveal the source, and her argument in that case, and there's a movie about that very case, very interesting. You should find it in the streaming services and watch it. She actually argued that the right of the press is greater than the right of citizens, and that what is protected in the right of free press is that she doesn't have to tell you sources. Well, she was seriously wrong, as the courts have held. That is not what's written in the Constitution. It's the right of free press to publish it. She sat in jail until they actually found out who the real source was. And then after she was released on that, the government filed a charge against her for something else so they could put her back in jail. Symbolism or symbolic speech. It is the case that I hate the most, but as someone who swears to protect and defend your constitutional rights, it is the law. And that is the Texas case where the United States Supreme Court declared that it was speech when you burn the American flag. There is nothing more visceral to me to invoke emotion of rage than watching someone desecrate the American flag. But the burning of the flag case was Texas versus Johnson in 1989, not really that long ago. Gary Lee Johnson was at the Republican National Convention and he opposed Ronald Reagan and Ronald Reagan's policies. So in an act of First Amendment speech, he burned the American flag. What about technology, Twitter and Facebook? This is the thing that everyone was talking about. When I first started researching this speech, the cases coming out of some of the district courts across the United States, a lot of them coming out of Kentucky because of Matt Bevin's case, and of course, the case against the president, Trump. It was all about, could you take down somebody from your platform? In other words, I'm on Twitter. If I have someone who's responding to a tweet and I don't like their speech or what they're saying about me, can I take them down? And the answer is no. When you're a politician, you are open to that criticism and you cannot take them down. But what about Twitter and Facebook taking everybody else down? Right now, they're standing behind that they are a private company and therefore they're using their rules within the company, and that is not a free speech platform. Well, it seems striking to me that that's what's being said now, despite the fact that the United States Supreme Court 3 years ago said that Twitter and Facebook have now replaced Main Street USA and the parks as the place where the free speech and the exchange of ideas is happening in this country. We're all waiting to see what actually Congress does and whether or not they alleviate that protection that they're giving them. As we look at spoken word and written word, what about your own publications? What if Pete tonight fired up the mimeograph machine and he started producing his own leaflet and flyer? I know he's not, he's going to go see a movie. But can you really distinguish between his leaflets and the Washington Post? No. In a series of cases, his leaflet stands as a right of free speech and a right of free press equal to those. Many believe that the First Amendment provides that greater protection, as we just talked about, but it's not true. But where a speech is happening, a grandstand, a public square, or a sidewalk is the traditional place of free speech. It's where they're exercised. But what about a shopping mall? In Marsh versus Alabama in 1946, the Supreme Court held that a business district of a privately owned company town was the same as a public street for First Amendment purposes, and finding that the more an owner for his advantage opens up his property for use by the public in general, boy, oh boy, this is a bad sentence. I obviously did not quote it right. The more his rights become circumscribed by the statutory and constitutional rights of those who use it. So opening your property up to the public. So the gazebo down in the city of center of town, where traditional free speech would have been heard. Amalgamated Food Employees versus Valley Plaza in 68, building on that, ownership does not always mean absolute dominion. The more an owner for his advantage opens up his property for the use by the public in general, the more his rights become circumscribed, following up on that other case. Well, what about a place of employment? The United States Supreme Court has written about this as well, and it really depends on who you are in that forum. For example, under Connecticut law, both public and private employers have free speech protections, and employers are prohibited from disciplining or discharging employees for exercising their first speech rights within certain limitations. Free speech is permissible, assuming it does not interfere with the employee's job performance. Certain speech is also protected under the National Labor Relations Act, which applies to both unionized and non-unionized workplaces, and it protects their right to engage in protected activities, like having a fair and open conversation about what is happening in the place of employment. Employees have the right to engage in speech and expression related to work conditions, including the compensation and benefits, supporting social or political causes, fair wages, and other issues. Employers are also generally not permitted to maintain rules prohibiting such speech except in specific circumstances. And of course, there's great protection for who? Whistleblowers. Statutes designed to allow employees to reveal what's happening in the workplace. But who is the speaker has also been decided by the United States Supreme Court. The case that most people ask about, Citizens United and the FEC. In 2010, it was the landmark decision by the United States Supreme Court that said that the relationship between campaign finance and free speech was linked. We have a right of free speech because political speech is the most protected speech in this country. And that's why it was created, that prohibition against taking your right of free speech was enacted. The court held that the First Amendment right to free speech prohibits the government from restricting independent expenditures for political campaigns by corporations, including nonprofit organizations, labor unions, and other associations. Citizens United, a conservative nonprofit, sought to air and advertise a film critical of then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton shortly before the 2008 primary. Advertising the film would have violated the 2002 Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, which prohibited any corporation, nonprofit organization, or labor union from making electioneering communication or speech within 30 days of a primary or 60 days of a general election. As a result, the United States Supreme Court struck down pieces of the act prohibiting independent expenditures. People have such a visceral response to this very case because they believe that the IEs, the independent expenditures, are now eclipsing the people's right to have a conversation with their elected leaders. I hear it every election season. I don't really see the ads because I'm off running, I'm traveling somewhere across the state, but everybody talks about them. And the ads, they're not always so nice. The ruling effectively allowed all of these organizations to do exactly what you're seeing in today's marketplace. The ruling represented a turning point, shifting in the United States for campaign finance. But what about an animal? Does an animal have a right of free speech? You might be shocked, but this is an actual case from 1983, and it's Miles versus the City Council of Augusta, Georgia. This couple had an exhibition for a talking cat, and they were required under the city's laws to get a license. In May of 1981, Carl and Elaine Miles, an otherwise unemployed couple, began exhibiting Blackie the talking cat on the streets of Augusta, Georgia. Blackie would meow, "I love you," or "I want my mama," to passersby who would give small change for the exhibition. They were finally caught by law enforcement, and they risked going to jail if they didn't get a $50 business license. So they purchased the business license and sued the city in federal court on the grounds that the city's licensing law was vague, overbroad, and violated their right of free speech and association. Specifically, they complained that neither the city charter, which allowed the city council to require a license for an occupation, trade, or business, nor the license ordinance mentioned talking animals. They lost in the district court on the basis that the definition of an occupation and business is engaged in the occupation or business of a work or activity of one's time or attention. Because the ordinance did not define occupation or businesses, the common definition was cited and their activity fell within it. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, in a footnote, now think about this. Now you're all the way to a circuit court They lost, then they appealed. This court will not, this is the exact quote, I love this. This court will not hear a claim that Blackie's first right of free speech has been infringed. First, although Blackie arguably possesses a very unusual ability, he cannot be considered a person and is therefore not protected by the Bill of Rights. Second, even if Blackie had such a right, we see no need for the appellants to assert his right, third-party rights, because clearly Blackie could be speaking for himself. Why do we have a right of free speech? I want you to really think about this. Think about everything that's happening in this country and the ability that people can no longer have a fair and honest conversation without it becoming an argument or fisticuffs. It is indispensable to a free democracy. Open debate about choices, communications of others. It is necessary for the growth and development of people. Think about where you were as a young child, as a teenager, as a young adult to where you are today, and how your values or what you believe has changed over time because of the ability to learn, to educate yourself, to have a fair exchange of conversation and ideas with others. Self-definition and direction. If I had not had the ability to have that exchange with other individuals and learning about their life, I may never have realized that I could be a lawyer or a judge someday. That growth and development of potential for my own life was significantly changed by that free expression of ideas with people I came in contact with. Because of the complexity of the issues that we face, it is important for you to consider all of these things before you engage in that argument at the holiday table. Think about it in terms of what does it protect? Who does it protect? When does it protect? And where does it protect? All of those things then bring you to the place and time where you can actually have a conversation about your right of free speech. And remember, I won't use myself as the example. These gentlemen cannot take your right of free speech. They're not the government. Only the government can intrude upon your right of free speech. So as you're having that screaming match with someone and you're saying they're shutting your free speech rights down, they can't. They're not the government. And free speech is more than just the spoken word. Think about the dollar. I marveled at Madonna when she sat on a talk show one night and she said that the American people were taking her right of free speech because they weren't buying her CD or watching her video when it was against President Bush. American people, the dollar is a right of free speech, not to spend it. How many coffee shops have lost business as a result of some of their stances? So that ultimate dollar also is a mark of speech. So when you start looking at those factors, then you can decide. But now I'll go back to my first question. Can you yell fire in a crowded theater? Of course you can if the theater is on fire. Of course you can if you genuinely believe it's on fire. Of course you can if you're the actor on the stage. But of course you can't, and the government has stopped you when you're simply just doing it to induce panic. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. May God bless all of you. And I'm sorry for your loss.
I don't know if you.
Oh, sure, there's plenty of time. I talked really fast.
Just not related to what you were talking about, but on the federal level, we see that, justices and security concerns. And it's, I forget the federal court judge who lost her son when someone attacked. What does the state do for our court system? I know it's local level, but like for the Supreme Court.
Well, it's a very timely conversation because of what is happening. Our judiciary does not have the same protective resources as do federal judges. They do when they're in their buildings, when they have moved to security systems, right? Megatometers and the rest. In January, I hope to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Ohio. And one of the task force that I think that we need to bring back is security. In order to look and examine that, I was, where was I? I was in Highland County last night. And they still have a parking space designating that the spot is marked for the common pleas court judge. You know, we took those down in Butler County when I became a trial court judge because of the shootings that had happened in other places. So they were just marked as reserved parking without a designation. And then if somebody was parking there, they would get towed. So I think that those kinds of conversations still need to happen because, hey, people are, if they get angry and are dangerous, they can go after anyone, just like they did the trial court judge in Jefferson County, where it was an adult probation officer and the judge themselves that stopped the attacker. The judge was a concealed carry license permit holder. So they returned fire and shot that individual. But for that and that quick action, I don't know what would have happened to that judge. But as you see, the lack of civility in order to have these discussions, it is unprecedented, the leak that happened at the United States Supreme Court. They have an internet and an intranet. Now, I am told that the intranet is where all of the work on opinions does so that no one could ever break into the internet to get a copy. So it is literally someone who works in that building who took it off the intranet and gave it to the newspaper in order to what? Influence the outcome of a case, in order for people to riot. We have never done this before in this country. And the fact that someone would come from California to Washington to want to kill Kavanaugh is shocking to me. Now, look, there are many mentally ill individuals who might engage in such conduct. But by and large, what you're finding, these are just citizens. They're not mentally ill. The gentleman who went after the judge in Jefferson, he was just angry. The trooper who killed a domestic relations court judge, I think it was in Connecticut, back when I was a trial court judge, doing domestic relations work. I mean, those are all the things that we have to start looking at again and taking seriously when someone threatens you. I've been threatened. My life's been threatened multiple times. I had people mail me stuff to my home. So I am not, my identity is not secret. You take my name and you put it in Butler County Auditor's office, you're going to see where I live. There is no law that shields my residence from public purview. But I now live in a house that has an alarm system and I'm loaded to the teeth with firearms. So if you want to break in my door, I'm going to be two sounds. One's going to be a thud. But I mean, think about that. But I'm not always there and I don't always travel with a firearm because there are so many places that now do not allow you to take in a firearm. I would never leave my firearm in my car for fear it would be broken into and stolen. And I had a gun safe that was kind of hidden away, but then the new law said you couldn't have hidden compartments in your car for firearms. And I feel like that would fit under there and I won't do that as well. So I do think it's a timely conversation and I do think it's time for a task force to go back and have other conversations with judges around the state about their own safety and security. Great question. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, how I do? You chose the topic.
Pretty good one.
Pretty good.
I apologize if I'm saying this wrong. I was not ever taught Latin. I think we term stare decisis.
Stare decisis,
Stare
yes.
decisis there.
Perfect.
Yeah, it feels like it's becoming less important. It feels, there are obviously times when it's correctly like overturned, Dred Scott, Plessy, etc. But it feels like now that we're in a climate where they're just going to overturn things because it fits their preference and they don't care about that. And they'll just say, oh, it was a bad decision, but it feels like it's about to get like a tit for tat kind of situation. And like hundreds of years of precedent might start going away really fast. And yeah, you can look at it just as like, we'll just choose Roe v. Wade. But what if the court was to flip in a year or 2, 5, it feels like it'll be the tit for tat. And like, I worry that precedent is going to start needing a lot less.
So his statement is that precedent, stare decisis, will mean a lot less. There's a tit to tat. I would like to say that I hope that that is not true. But here's the rules on stare decisis. Stare decisis is less influential when you're talking about procedural rules and less influential when you're looking at constitutional issues. Because our oath is to say what the Constitution says, not uphold what someone else said it is. And if you believe, and you are a textualist and originalist, what did the words mean of the constitutional provision at the time it was written? So when you read Roe versus Wade from that perspective, and you read the dissent of Justice Scalia, he was very strong in the text and originalist theory, because when the 14th Amendment was written, and when privacy rights were written about in the 14th Amendment, it was not about someone's right or ability to have an abortion. That was his whole conversation in his dissent. The word abortion does not appear in the United States Constitution or in any of the amendments since. And what he said is, because when you read the 14th Amendment, that was not what the founders were thinking of. You cannot find that in that provision. Now you have a majority of the court that thinks like he does. They're textualists and originalists. But I would say that every justice who serves at the United States Supreme Court, if you go back and watch their confirmation hearings, every single one of them said they would base it on the text of what the provision says. You're just seeing people say, that's not what it says, and that's not what it says when it originated. Whether or not the court flips and then it goes back to, yes, Roe versus Wade, and the right to have an abortion is found under the 14th Amendment, I have no idea. Statutorily, finishing up the conversation about stare decisis, when you have a nimble General Assembly, they can actually do something about a court's interpretation. Think about how hard it is for people to change a constitution. In Ohio, it takes a citizens initiative, collecting all those signatures, getting it on the ballot, or it takes what you just saw 2 weeks ago, a joint resolution from the House and Senate to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot for the people to ratify, because they can't do it. It's us that ratifies constitutional amendments. But think of it in terms of the statutes. If we interpret a statute and the General Assembly says, well, that's not what we really meant, they have the ability the next day to go in and institute a new law to say, well, this is what it meant. So State versus Smith was the first majority opinion that I wrote when coming to the Ohio Supreme Court. And it was a case about whether or not you could charge someone with a crime of violating a civil protection order. Well, there was a sentence in the statute that says, in order to charge them with a crime, you have to have completed the requirements of 3113-31. I worked in the world of 3113-31 for 14 years as a trial court judge. Well, 3113-31 required a law enforcement officer to serve it on a respondent in order for you to be charged with a crime of violating the order. When State versus Smith, that didn't happen. She had gone to the courthouse, she got her order, and law enforcement never served it on her paramour. She does tell him, don't come home, I've got this order, and he breaks in, beats her up, and he's charged with a whole host of other felonies. But this misdemeanor of the first degree, we said, because they didn't comply with what the General Assembly said, the provisions of 3113-31, you could not go forward with that conviction. The very next day, the General Assembly decided to erase that sentence and put in substantial notice. It was a 4-3 decision. 3 people would have found substantial notice was enough. I'm not there. That's not what it said. It said you will comply with all the requirements of 3113-31. Substantial notice isn't in there. I don't believe my job is to say what the law should be or to create an outcome. I believe judges say what the law says, period. If we don't like it, we go back to the men and women who serve us in Columbus or in Washington, even if they're ineffectual. But that's where we exercise our ability to say what the law should be. Because I wear a robe doesn't mean I get a third voice. Doesn't mean to say that I have the ability to erase all of this and just do it by way of Sharon Kennedy. Good heavens, you certainly don't want that.
So this brings up the question, are the constitutions of both the state of Ohio and the United States, in your opinion, frozen in time?
Well, they're frozen in the time that they were written. So if you look at the Ohio Constitution, the first one was 1803. It was basically eradicated by 1851. And since that time, you have enacted amendments, 1912, 1983, and whether or not you choose to do that in 2022. But you go back to the time they're written. So when I did a case that was looking at a provision of the 1912 Constitution of the state, I didn't take out a 2022 dictionary. I took out a dictionary from 1911 to distill the meanings of the words that they chose to use at that time. Words change, meaning of words change over time. So as a result of that, I went back to what the founders, what we would have recognized those words to mean at the time of ratification, not the time of today. And I do. I believe that the Constitution was written for all of time. It is not living and breathing. As Justice Scalia would say, free speech rights in the First Amendment. Those rights don't need to change in order to move with technology. It means the same thing. It's just whether or not that tweet, that Facebook post, or your electronic blogging, whether that is speech. That's why I don't believe it's living, breathing. May God bless all of you, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you very much again. Always a pleasure having you. So we, as you know, we dedicate a book, which you've already signed, but it's called Turtle in Paradise. So that would be at the Greene County Library. A quick announcement, we do have a board meeting after this meeting here, right in here. Next week's program is Mary Jo Haviland with Dayton Red Cross. I will not be here. I'll be on vacation. So you're stuck with Brandon, so take that as you want. Anything else for the good of the club? All right, let's rise for the pledge. And the flag's over here today. Would you like to lead us, Jim?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.